these swing state polls. I always say when I talk about polls, FTM, follow the money. All we talk is money. All we talk is money. There's Pew, there's Quinnipiac, there's Wall Street Journal, there's ABC, there's NBC, there's a million different polls. Who I trust is Vegas because they have the money on the line.
Okay.
So, yeah, you like that? Yeah. Pull up some of these polls of what's going on right there, and let's get everybody's feedback on this. Humberto, do you have those polls in the swing states? So I say this all the time. How many people voted in 2020? It was 100 and, not you guys.
Okay.
In the country, I think Biden 81 million, Trump 75. So 155, 160 million people. But give or take about 100,000 people actually run this country. Why? Because they're in the swing states and they determine every year who gets elected. And I say it all the time, America's basically bipolar. Give me Bush. Nah, fuck Bush. We're going with Obama. Okay, Obama, nope. All right, we're going to go with Trump. No, screw Trump. We're going with Biden. Boom, boom, boom. It's like shake and bake over here, Ricky Bobby. But these people in these swing states control the fate of our country. That's why we see hundreds of millions of dollars pumped into the following states. You got Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Each of these states have voted for Bush, then Obama, then Trump, then Biden, and now it's looking like they're going back to Trump. Can we pull up these stats here, Humberto? Punch it on this, Nat. See what we got here.
So we have Arizona, 47% Trump, Georgia, 44%, and then we've got Michigan at 48%, North Carolina, 49%, Nevada, 48%, Pennsylvania,
So basically what she's saying is Trump is up 5 in Arizona.
Yeah.
Trump is up 1 in Georgia. Trump is up
3
in Michigan.
6
up
in
6 in North Carolina.
4
Up 4 in Nevada. Come on, help me out here now. You know my eyes aren't what they used to be.
Pennsylvania.
And Wisconsin's tight.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on here. Fabian, you're in Florida. You're from New York. New York, a blue state. You never have to worry about swing states there. Florida used to be purple. I don't know if people remember that. Before DeSantis, it was a purple state. Miami-Dade, born and raised here, also was actually a blue county. It flipped tremendously for DeSantis.
Plus 20.
In 2020, correct. Or 2022.
2022 plus
That's
20
right.
points, right.
Fabian, as a politician, right? You're campaigning. You're looking at polls. You know what's going on. You're reading the tea leaves. How concerned should the Biden administration be that Trump's just going to blow them out of the water when these swing states?
So, firstly, I take offense to being called a politician. But
you are a state representative.
But I'll take it because this is a true community service.
Yep.
I also don't run any polls. I haven't done one since I started. Because if you really want to know what's going on, walk down to your local markets and have a conversation with everyone walking outside. And if you notice historically, people have been voting against issues, against teams, against their one issue vote. The one issue voters just vote against the other guy that doesn't agree with them. And the biggest problem that we are dealing with right now is that people are truly undereducated on the process, on the issues, on the players. And that's one part of it, right? And then the other part is because people are so busy in their life, they don't have time to really do that work. They're dependent on what's marketed on the candidates that we have. And right now, and that's why smear campaigns have been in the past so successful, right? Because they're not proposing solutions. They're just going to tear down the opposition so that you'll vote away from them. But at this point, we've gotten to a point where people just can no longer afford to not vote on policy. They just can't afford it. Not financially, not emotionally, not morally. It's just, so Trump walking into the White House is something that is going to make a lot of people very happy and a lot of people not very happy. And I represent a district where you mention the mere name of Trump and people literally, I've seen it with my eyes, they curl up into a ball, crawl down and scream like a siren and turn bright red like they're going to explode. And I understand it and I represent them.
Just when you say his name.
I need to engage them and I need to understand it, right? Because he's had some time where he's excited a lot of people and rubbed them the wrong way and he's, had the mean tweets and all of this. And it's distracted from the work when pen to paper, I don't know that anyone can arguably say anyone's done it better, right? So where are we at today? I mean, I can argue both sides of the aisle. I can say would Ukraine have happened? Would our situation in Israel have happened? Would any of these major issues? Would 4 items at Whole Foods cost $105 today? You know, like, would you be able to afford to fill your gas tank and get to work? Like, these are
Fabián, you said something pretty interesting. You said most people aren't voting for something; they're voting against something. Here's some polling for you: 57% of people are voting for Trump. 31% of people are voting for Biden. I can tell you conclusively, in 2020, and I've said this a million different times, a ham sandwich could have ran against Trump in 2020. People would have voted against Trump. Straight up, give me that ham sandwich. And I know people that don't even eat pork would have voted against Trump. But I think that things have changed because now we have data. Now we have 4 years of Trump,
Biden,
3+ years of Biden, and people are like, yeah, give me some of the mean tweets. So I think there's some comparative data going on here. By the way, Pixie, as a progressive who's loudly said you're never going to vote for Trump, are you voting for Biden or are you voting against Trump?
There are specific actions that Biden has taken that I personally enjoy or like. Right now, I'm definitely more on the voting against Trump side of things. That's not to say I don't like anything Biden has done, but and we'll get into this later, but basically when it comes to like the threat of democracy, or when it comes to this idea of like, oh, who do I think is more dangerous to be in power, I'm definitely more leaning towards the side of like Trump is that danger.
What's the most concerning thing that you say is a threat to democracy? What concerns you the most?
I think it's because after the election, there were certain actions that he took that made me think like, oh no, like he's really not for real free democracy. One of those is, for example, when he called the Georgia like elected basically, yep, and was saying like, oh, you know, can you find me like 11,807 votes, one more than like what we currently have or whatever, so we could win. So to me, that's like a clear example, and this is a recording, we could like even find it, of, hey, this guy doesn't care about like the electoral process. So just things like that, items like that.
Can I interject something?
Yeah,
I mean, and I'm focused on local elections. People don't realize the significance of local elections in your everyday lives. Yeah. So I'm not arguing for Trump here, but I just want to add something. There is no bigger threat to our democracy than making people's voices not heard on a ballot, and the mere distractions there, and the what's been enacted to try to keep a person off of a ballot to hear the voice of our constituents nationally. For me, that's a problem. Yeah. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, to my understanding, basically when it comes to that, the states themselves are the ones essentially saying like, oh no, we don't want him on the ballot. Personally, I agree with you. I think he should still be on the ballot either way. But to me, that's like, okay, that's like a state problem. That you're right, there are certain states that are not being as democratic as they should be. However, like when I think about things like in a federal level, that's where I feel like, oh, Trump is more of a threat. But basically, I agree with you on the sense of like states shouldn't say you can't be on the ballot.
Well, let me pose a question for Linda and Toria right now. Did you see RFK's interview on Aaron Burnett, CNN? We can even probably pull up the image of it. So there's a couple of things they talked about. Regarding the state and the election, by the way, we saw that Colorado tried to take him off the ballot. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0. 9-0 that you got to keep Trump on the ballot, right? By the way, Supreme Court approval ratings, like recent all-time highs, just because they're basically doing their job. So whether you like Trump or don't like Trump, what I always say is beat him in the game, not in the pregame. Right? Shout out to our sports team out there with the mouthpiece. Beat him in the game. Don't try to eliminate him before the pregame. But RFK goes on Aaron Burnett, CNN, and he says the following. He says, both sides are using scare tactics. Republicans say if Biden wins, it's going to be the end of the republic. Democrats say that if Trump wins, it's going to be the end of the democracy. Neither of those things are true. Our institutions are enduring. He talks about the culture issues that are killing us, abortion, guns, border. But he said compared to the two, right? And this is RFK, who's a lifelong Democrat, son of Bobby Kennedy, assassinated, nephew of JFK, assassinated. He says, yeah, Trump doing the Georgia election thing, not a good look. But the biggest threat to democracy is Biden and the censorship, because he says paramount to anything is the First Amendment. And the censorship, and we've dealt with this on YouTube, on Meta, on all the platforms, TikTok especially, censorship. That, he says, is the biggest threat to democracy. And believe me, he has not so kind words for Trump as well. But he said Biden, shockingly enough, is a bigger threat to democracy. What do you think when you hear threat to democracy, Linda?
The first thing that I will ask Pixie is, if Trump is such a threat to democracy, then why didn't he just end democracy the first term? You know, I see these liberals and they're always like, they're going to put gays in concentration camps and they're going to deport our brown people and like all these crazy things. And like, what happened to that? Why weren't gays in concentration camps? Why aren't they deporting all brown people? Like what did he do during his 4 years that was a threat to democracy? And why didn't he end democracy then?
I think the clearest example to answer that is basically January 6th,
which was a riot. It wasn't an insurrection.
We all have guns.
We all have guns. We have plenty of ammunition. If Trump supporters, which is 65 million of them, and 1 million who were in Washington, D.C., really wanted to take over the Capitol or anything, to be honest with you, they would have pulled up with guns and ammunition. Well, it was a riot. And
what is it?
That's it.
There's a couple of things to break down here. First of all, obviously not all Trump supporters are the same. Just because you try an insurrection doesn't mean that every single Trump supporter is going to try to do an insurrection.
It wasn't an insurrection.
I would say, second of all, it was an insurrection because specifically the whole point of it was to try to pressure Pence into using his power as a vice president to essentially overturn the electorate and nominate Trump as a winner, essentially.
But that's not what an insurrection is.
Yes, an insurrection is when you're trying to essentially overthrow the current government or the government in place.
And you're going to throw the government with flagpoles and iPhone sticks?
A lot of these people actually did come with some level of guns. A lot of these people did come with some level of like tactical measures on them, as well as like police gear as well.
There was no guns allowed. I was in Washington, D.C. that weekend. There was no guns allowed within an entire radius. If they found 2 or 3 guns on people, over 1 million Trump supporters that were there.
It wasn't 1 million. It was 2,000 people breaking into the Capitol.
No, I'm talking about the amount of people that were in Washington, D.C. that day. It was almost 1 million people. I'm just talking about who went into the Capitol, because there was people watching him at the eclipse over a mile away from the Capitol. So if it was a real insurrection, like that they were going to overthrow the government, you really think that people were going to go without AR-15s and guns and everything else, all weapons that would actually overthrow a government?
Well, a lot of them came in with a level of weaponry, but the point of that insurrection was not necessarily to just like kill everybody. It was, again, to pressure Pence, who has said this on record, we can search it up right now, that, oh no, like he was trying to make me, within my power of vice presidency, declare the electorate winner, Trump. And that's what essentially an insurrection is. An insurrection doesn't have to necessarily be 1 million people shooting up places. And then on top of that, they also found bombs in the DNC.
Which they found out before in the DNC and the RNC, and the FBI still doesn't give us any information on that.
Well, here's why. Because there were paid assets and federal employees that were on the grounds, and they don't even want to expose those identities, because then that would expose the whole plot. I'm fully convinced that people who pretend to be on our side actually did January 6th, and I think that the entire thing was to try to make Trump look stupid and his followers look unintelligent. And I believe that the reason he called people to go on that day was so they could witness what actually happened, because the true MAGA supporters were not causing any violence, and you could tell the clear difference between the two.
So just to be clear on the insurrection thing, everyone's favorite topic. I mean, it's amazing. So your estimation is that MAGA was not trying to do that, and I do agree that, I mean, you can have a house party and have an amazing event, 10 idiots start fighting, boom, the whole thing gets ruined. So what I want to get everyone's actually answer on, and then I want to get this, we'll go with that in a second. We can debate the insurrection thing, no doubt. Like the words, is it insurrection, is it a rebellion? Can we at least agree was not a good look for the country that day?
Yeah.
Just on the very least, not a good look.
By design.
Okay, was not a good look, yes?
Regardless, though,
Okay.
it was one of the saddest days for America. Should not have happened.
Yeah.
Let's learn from this mistake and let's move forward. Let's talk about what's going to happen tomorrow in these upcoming elections, right?
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
like this makes me kind of mad. Like, I won't discuss if it was an insurrection or not, but during the Trump presidency, he was forced into the safety room, like, because there was actually people outside burning things, throwing
BLM.
things in. Like, what's the difference there? Like, nobody remembers.
What do you mean forced in the safety room?
Yeah, I think it was March 4th that year. Like, there was insurrectionists outside, and they forced Trump into a safety room. Like,
Actually, I have a great story about insurrections and all of the goons that were trying to kill us. So I was featured in a part of the campaign for Trump's 2020 campaign, and I went to the RNC to, what is it called, Fabian? Is it the RNC?
Where?
When they do it every single year?
Republican National
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
RNC.
In July of 2020, and we were at the White House, and we're having a beautiful event, and there's fireworks, and all of these goons and thugs are outside of the White House screaming like animals, playing loud music, and then they were waiting for the guest. Ron Paul was attacked. A bunch of different people were attacked, literally physically attacking people. If it wasn't for the police that helped me, along with some other guests, literally escort us back to our hotel, we would have gotten physically assaulted. And this is what's going on in DC. I went to DC
Who
4
was
or
this?
5
BLM?
different times.
Was
The
this
BLM and
Antifa? Who was
Antifa.
it?
BLM and Antifa.
And what was their goal?
To literally hate you, to physically assault
But
you.
you were in the White House behind gates? or what?
Yes,
Yeah.
they were just trying to disrupt the event. But when it ended, we had to walk back to our hotel. Some people were at different hotels around the White House.
Yeah.
They started assaulting people. They did it to Ron Paul and his wife. They did it to Vernon Jones. I mean, you could still see the images and videos online of what was going on. I stayed behind for a little bit until the police came and escorted people like me and others in their cop cars to our hotels because it was that dangerous. So Trump supporters aren't like that, but these people are able to get away with it because they have the media on their side, they have a liberal establishment, and nobody wants to talk about that.
Yeah, that fair point, and we're all glad you're okay, Linda.
Thank
Thank
you.
God. Everyone, give us a moment
Thank you.
for Linda.
And-
By the way, do you have that interview that I did with Vinny?
I do have it.
And Pixie, I want to ask you a question. So I actually had the chance to interview, speaking of a threat to democracy, speaking of January 6th, Vinny and I interviewed Jacob Chansley, the QAnon shaman.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Like,
Oh,
full
yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
do you
dangerous.
have that image?
yeah.
Show it. So here's us talking to the guy. And
with us today, I mean,
look, let me tell you something.
if you see him,
I think we all know this. I've done this a million times. Thank you.
First person.
I'm very like, even Destiny, Candace Owens said this about me. They're like, Adam's just very fair. I'm very in the middle. Like, I'll go this way, I'll go this way. I'm kind of looking for the truth, veritas. So I'm not anything fringe, anything extremist in any capacity. I ain't playing that game. I'm looking for common sense. Yeah, calling bullshit, balls and strikes, umpire vibes. When I sat down with this guy, Jacob Chansley, the QAnon shaman, prior to the interview, like, you could see my body language. I'm like, this is what's fucking going on here, bro. Like, like, what are the people going to say? By the end of the interview, after getting to know this guy, what's up, Jacob? Like, this is my guy. Because he was actually very smart and very common sense. And shockingly enough, like almost like a hippie, holistic healer. He's like, I was there to heal.
Yeah, he did a prayer.
Yeah, like he was
Amen.
a shaman.
That's not shocking.
So people are so focused on the QAnon part of the shaman.
Yeah.
He's like not even part of that.
Muted.
But he was a shaman. So it was very interesting. So I actually like what I had to say with him. But I want to go to Pixie here. Totally understand why someone like you or anyone on the left-leaning side of things would understand after January 6th, the threat to democracy, the find me 11,000 votes. I get it. I understand why. I'm not saying that that's valid, but I understand why you think that way. Prior to January 6th, right? Prior to find me the votes, right? Let's table that. What else on his resume would make you say, yep, threat to democracy?
I think an example of that would be the fact that he talked about potentially taking away birthright citizenship. I think that is a very dangerous game to play. I think when you see in countries that have like dictatorships or fascist regimes, that's usually something that they implement.
What do you
or
mean
if not-
birthright citizenship? Like if you're born here in America?
Yeah, that you're not an automatic citizen.
If you are born to an illegal
Like an anchor baby?
Parent, correct.
Yeah, but not just
Okay.
even that. He was like also talking about that, and as you guys may or may not know, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. Like talking about taking that away from Puerto Ricans as well. I think taking away citizenship like that is a super dangerous game to play, because if the government can be like, oh, well, now I don't think you deserve to be a citizen despite the fact that you were born here, who says that it doesn't basically slope into other things?
Okay.
Like, oh, now you're no longer a citizen because you did this
business.
thing
I
didn't
understand.
like.
Okay, valid concern. I'm not even sure if that's an executive order, how that works with Congress. What else?
He also talked about taking away term limits for presidencies. I think that is super dangerous. He joked about having a third term multiple times. I personally feel really uncomfortable with that. I think having term limits for presidencies is super important to ensure that you don't have necessarily a forever president, or so they can't have enough time to do some trickery.
Yeah,
So,
but
let me-
talking versus doing, like you're saying, he said. Well, Joe Biden also said that we were going to be bombed with F-50s if we got too crazy. So, but saying versus doing, like,
Well, I think, what is it? Saying is a precursor to doing.
What policies did he pass that were a threat to democracy?
Well, there's a couple things, like in this sense. I think we should not diminish talking about things, because that's a precursor of action, right? Throwing this out there, seeing how much support you can get when it comes to these policies is what you do like right before then. So I think being like, oh no, he's just said it, he didn't pass it. Well, what do you think he wants to do? He's saying openly, these are things I want to do. And that's dangerous. That makes me think, yes, he wants to act on it.
Let me ask, I totally understand, a great point. There's a difference between rhetoric and policy. Toria, like for instance, when Trump says something like, you saw when Hannity asked him, the people think you're going to be a dictator. Trump, are you going to be a dictator? Do you remember what he said? Only on day one, right? I'm going to close the border down and I'm going to eliminate, I'm going to drill, baby, drill. So for someone like Pixie, by the way, she's probably not going to vote for Trump. For people who are already codified on the Trump vote, like they're voting for him regardless. What I know about you is you're actually pretty fair, even despite being hardcore on the Trump side of things, working with cash. When he uses those types of words, even as a Trump fan, Trump advocate, are you kind of like, don't say stuff, don't say you're going to be a dictator? How do you feel about that?
I think he was making fun of the media because every single thing he says gets twisted. We know about the bloodbath comment, which was actually about the auto industry. So anything that he says, he knows. And I believe it was Trump himself that said, all press is good press. So he thrives off people twisting what he says into something else. And I think that he's smart for that because he takes control of the situation and he's not afraid of what's to come.
Let me ask Fabián a question. As our non-politician, Linda made a great point. Difference between rhetoric and policy. So, politicians, what's the famous line? Like, I knew you were lying because you were talking.
Your lips are moving.
Your lips are moving. Rhetoric versus policy. Linda mentioned that.
So I think, and I agree with her 100%, and I think that people are starting to see that as well because it's just been so sensationalized. But one of the main things that I talk about is why? Why does he let this happen? I mean, obviously, whether he does or doesn't have the discipline to refrain from saying certain things, why does he let it happen, right? I mean, is no one advising him? And something that people need to realize is these elections, and I notice what they cost, like statewide, national elections costing billions of dollars, they shouldn't cost this much. And that's a huge investment. So what is he doing? He's taking a skill set that he knows in marketing and owning the media for 6 cents on the dollar. Now, do I like that it has to happen? Do I like that it's happened? No. Do I understand it? Yes. Do I take everything he says personally? Do I take offense to it? No. I'm built a little tougher. I'm also from New York. I understand that tone. I get it. But at the same time, is that the only reason to vote or not vote for the man? At the same time, he was able to, for the most part, self-fund, a tremendous campaign, which it should just be based on debates and proposed solutions, but it's just not that way anymore, right? And for you to say that one person is proposing themselves to be a dictator, at the same time, would you say that only one machine has been running this nation for the many years? I mean, this program decline is not something that happens overnight. There is a plan, right? And people are suffering. And by the way, politicians on both sides have left people behind a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
Well said, Fabian. Let's get into some of the stats and some of the polling. Great conversation right there. Humberto, you're going to have your work cut out for you because we got a lot going on right now. Let's just start with the Vegas odds. We talked about the Vegas odds. I don't really necessarily look at the Pew or the Quinnipiac. I look at Vegas odds. And by the way, full disclosure, brace for impact, guys. I bet everybody I knew and made tens of thousands of dollars voting on Joe Biden, betting on Joe Biden in 2020. Why? Because everyone's getting so emotional. Everyone's getting so caught up. Trump, Biden. I'm like, yeah, just what's Vegas saying? Because for me, everything comes down to accountability and having skin in the game.
Yep.
If a polling company gets paid to run polls, but if they're wrong and they lose $0, they don't give two shits. If Vegas gets it wrong, they lose millions, if not billions of dollars. So what people forget about 2020, do you know who the favorite was to win the presidency? It was Joe Biden. It was like 175 to 100. So meaning it wasn't even close. Like he was favored to beat Trump. So people were like, what? I had, what's buddy that the Indian guy, super conservative, that did the
Vivek.
2,000 Mules. No, not Vivek. That's my guy.
Dinesh.
Dinesh D'Souza. He did what was the movie he came out with, 2,000 Mules?
Yeah.
And police state.
Okay, police state. Super smart guy, amazing guy. He was on the podcast, and he did the whole, on PBD podcast probably a year ago. And I said to him, Dinesh, amazing documentary. It was awesome. You're talking about, anything, by the way, with the documentary, easy to skew, left or right. I said, by the way, do you know who was favored in 2020? He goes, Trump. I go, no, you're absolutely wrong. It was Biden. He's like, how do you know that? I'm like, because I bet PBD, I bet this person, I bet this person. PBD paid me $1,000 on the podcast, straight up. So I just followed the money. So that's what I did. Zero emotion, all logic. Again, I say this all the time. I'm not red. I'm not blue. I'm red, white, and blue, and I follow the green. FTM, follow the money.
Love that.
So if you look at Vegas this time, Trump's the favorite right now. So go to these odds right quick. So Donald Trump favored 10 to 1. So meaning if you bet on Trump, you bet $100, 10 to 11, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nat, you're going to help me out here. You win $91, meaning you bet 100 to only win 91. Biden, what's the numbers for Biden?
It was 7-5. 7 to 5.
Okay, so you bet 100 on Biden, you win 140. Keep going down the
Michelle
list.
Obama's 14-1. Robert Kennedy Jr. is 22-1. Gavin Newsom is 25-1. Kamala Harris is 33-1. Gretchen Whitmer's 81.
Yeah.
Jim Phillips 81.
And then all other candidates 100 higher. So meaning,
Yeah.
if you were saying, Adam, who are you betting on today? I'll just give me Trump. Whoa. If you like that one, click right here to watch the full SOSCAST. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.